It's almost 11 o'clock and there are just two participants here. Hello, Ramya and Natasha.
Yes, sir. Hello. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
I hope you had a very productive gap that we had after the ancient uh, classes. So I have planned a few things that I'll discuss with you first, and then we will go through some of the topics that we have already discussed because there are a few new students also. So I have to just give them a guidance that how to go ahead with the classes, and then we will start today's class. So the topic that we have Okay, the net is a little jittery, so I hope the issue will be resolved soon. If it disconnects, I will again connect it. Okay, so
All right, sir.
so that won't be an issue. Okay, what I was saying was is that we have covered ancient history classes, and so like there is a schedule of high yielding classes, but I am giving a little more gap in between the schedule. The reason for that is because the target was to finish classes by 15 February, but now because we are quickly starting our current affairs classes also, so we have the luxury of going till the March, because few of the last topics you just need 2 to 3 times revision, that easily can be done. और जो आपके एंशियंट प्लस मिडिवल के जो नोट्स हैं which I will be sharing, you have to read it at least 5 to 6 times to score decently well in the prelims examination. Okay, so this should be your target. आज आपकी क्लास है 11th को, your next class will be on 13th, and then there will be one class on 14th. Okay, and next class will be either on 17 or 18, that will be of modern history, 14th and 17, 18, whenever I'll just schedule the classes. Okay, so this is the first thing. So I hope that your ancient classes were very productive, and the gap that you have got, so you have utilized it productively. Okay, so this is the common this thing that I wanted to give you idea of how next few sessions are going to be. So my target is that by 18th January your history should be finished, and by 20th January hopefully you have revised and you have read everything related to history, so that we can move on to the next topics. Okay, now these are the final notes that I have shared with you of ancient history. Okay, so today also I will give you some notes. Now those notes, that the notes that I will give you today has been formed by two sources. First is old NCRT, and second is new NCRT, some of the topics of new NCRT, and third, some coaching notes I have taken. I have used them to categorize the notes, because generally old NCRTs and new NCRTs, they are given in story format. So to categorize it in the form of UPSC format, it is easier if we look at the work of some other people. Okay, so these are the two things. Now I want to add one more source, and that is Lucent, because I have found that Lucent is very good source of for three things. Lucent is very good source. One is ancient history, second is medieval history, and third is general science, especially biology. The biology portion of general science has been excellently covered in Lucent. Okay, so my target is to incorporate all the important points of Lucent into these notes, but this will not be there in today's notes. Today we will be just reading old NCRTs and new NCRTs, but as soon as I will get like before your classes finish or after your classes are over of your medieval history, so within 1 or 2 days, just like ancient history, I will give the main notes of your medieval history also. So these are your one stop notes. One stop notes means, see, if you have made your own notes, then that is good enough. Okay, अगर आपने अपने खुद के notes बनाए हुए हैं, तो that is good enough. You do not need to worry about anything else. However, if you have not made your own notes, then these are more than sufficient notes. So these are one stop notes that you will read, and you have to just revise it. Read and revise, read and revise. Now, see one thing, that I have not highlighted even the major points. Even these major points like colonial view, sources of history, I have not highlighted anything, and the reason for that is I have consciously done that because I want to give you very raw notes and it is up to you to decide what to do with these notes. तो आप इस पे कलर पेन से, like for example I will recommend कि for example if there is a word called हितोपदेशा, है ना, तो इसको आप एक रेड पेन से या ग्रीन पेन से डिसाइड कर लो कि जो भी टर्मिनोलॉजीज है ना, डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ टर्मिनोलॉजीज आर देयर। जस्ट अ सेकंड, लाइक किसी एक टॉपिक पे जाते हैं, ठीक है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल पोस्ट मॉरियंस पे हम गए, ठीक है। अब पोस्ट मॉरियंस पे वी आर रीडिंग समथिंग 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 एंड वी फाउंड सम वर्ड लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल मार्गवग्निमित्रम, ठीक है। ये तो चलो एक बुक है, बट इफ यू हैव फाउंड सम वर्ड, तो उस वर्ड को यू कैन हाईलाइट इट विद सम अदर पेन, ठीक है। अगर कोई और सोर्स है तो उसको, तो इस पे आपको किस चीज पे फोकस करना है व्हेन यू आर रीडिंग एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री और मिडिवल हिस्ट्री और व्हाटएवर, ये मैंने पहले भी डिस्कस किया था। पहला तो अंडरस्टैंड द कंटेक्स्ट, ठीक है, कि फॉर एग्जांपल अगर प्री मॉरियन एज है, ठीक है, तो प्री मॉरियन एज का कंटेक्स्ट क्या था, व्हाट वाज द कंटेक्स्ट बिहाइंड प्री मॉरियन एज, व्हाट वाज द सोशल लाइफ एट दैट टाइम, व्हाट वाज द इकोनॉमिक लाइफ एट दैट टाइम, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ ट्रेड वाज डन एट दैट टाइम, है ना। तो उस तरीके का एक कंटेक्स्ट निकालना है। दूसरी चीज टाइमलाइन एंड ज्योग्राफी, ठीक है। सो फॉर एग्जांपल इफ आई से सातवाहना, तो you know कि we are talking about around 200 BC and which part of India, तो the part of Andhra and Maharashtra region. So this is the clarity that you should have. अगर मैं बोलूंगा कि कनिष्क एम्पायर, ठीक है, कनिष्क जो था वो, सॉरी कुशन एम्पायर, जो कनिष्क थे वो कब थे, तो you should know कि he was in north west India at around at the end of BC and at the start of AD, ठीक है। Similarly if I say रुद्रमन वन, तो वो कब थे। तो इस तरीके से क्या होगा, यू विल हैव एन आइडिया ऑफ कि कौन किसके कंटेम्परेरी थे। बिकॉज इफ आई विल से कि चंद्रगुप्ता मौर्य एंड से सम अदर लीडर लाइक सुंगा, पुष्वामित्र सुंगा, so they were contemporaries, obviously they were not contemporaries, it is only when Mauryan empire ended that Sunga dynasty started, ठीक है। तो आपको पहली चीज क्या फोकस करना है, कंटेक्स्ट पे। सेकंड थिंग, यू हैव टू फोकस ऑन टाइमलाइन एंड ज्योग्राफी, एंड थर्ड थिंग इज वर्ड्स। कुछ जो हिंदी संस्कृत प्राकृत वर्ड्स होते हैं विच वर स्पेशली यूज्ड इन दोस टाइम्स, 2 से 3 क्वेश्चन यूपीएससी में हर साल वर्ड से रिलेटेड ही आते हैं। एंड इफ यू आर वेरी कॉन्शियस अबाउट द वर्ड्स दैट हैज बीन यूज्ड, कि कॉइन को क्या बोला जाता था, है ना, या फॉर एग्जांपल आई व्हेन आई वाज मेकिंग नोट्स आई केम अक्रॉस वन थिंग, आई विल जस्ट शेयर इट विथ यू। इन द प्री मौर्यन हिस्ट्री, है ना, तो ये तो हड़प्पा पीरियड हो गया, फिर ये वैदिक एज हो गया, ठीक है। द नेक्स्ट इज योर प्री मौर्यन एज। प्री मौर्यन एज पे अगर हम इकोनॉमी में जाते हैं ना, इफ विल गो टू द इकोनॉमी, so here it is कि जो लैंड मेजरमेंट था, so earlier what was happening कि now because society was getting privatized, और जब कोई भी चीज प्राइवेटाइज होती है तो what does that means, that means कि जो लैंड है it will be divided among people, ठीक है। तो जो लैंड को डिवाइड करने का कोई तो तरीका होता है ना, जैसे किला होता है, मरला होता है, एकड़ होता है, समथिंग दैट यू विल यूज, ठीक है। तो एट दैट टाइम जो लैंड मेजरिंग यूनिट्स थे ड्यूरिंग द प्री मौर्यन टाइम्स, तो देवर करीसा, निवर्तन एंड कुल्यवापा, ठीक है। नाउ this kulyavapa has been asked in UPSC, I think in either in 2021 or 2022, I do not remember the exact year, but this question was asked, ठीक है। सिमिलरली अब यहाँ पे देखो कितने सारे आपको वर्ड मिल रहे हैं यहाँ पे, लाइक द लीडर ऑफ द श्रेणीज दे वर कॉल्ड पमुका, प्रवरा और ज्येष्ठा, सो इट कैन बी आस्क्ड कि पमुका और प्रवरा ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडियाज वर। तो व्हेन यू अब यहाँ पे श्रेणी धर्म या जिस तरीके की भी चीजें आप पढ़ रहे हो, सो यू हैव टू यूज वन पेन to just highlight these important points, okay। तो ये, and with this your ancient history will be over, ठीक है। इस कंटेक्स्ट पे अगर आप पढ़ोगे तो आपकी एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री जो है पूरी की पूरी खत्म हो जाएगी, एंड विथ वेरी मच ईज। सो आई होप द स्टूडेंट्स हु वर present in the class from the starting, like when they have begun the classes from the starting, so they have already finished the ancient history. Those who have not, they will just take the print out of this and read it within 1 to 2 days, है ना। और उसके बाद अब आपको क्या करना है, this is my work is done, now what you have to do is you read it 1 or 2 times, then pick up previous year questions and start incorporating those questions within these notes, ठीक है। और ये आपका वन शॉट देखो 78 पेजेस पे 2 पेजेस तो आप वो कर दो तो इट इज 76 पेजेस नोट्स। इससे कम कहीं नहीं मिलेगा, इससे कम कहीं भी नहीं मिलेगा एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री का, ठीक है। इफ यू वांट डिसेंट इनफ नोट्स, so these are just 76 pages, plus you have to add all the information that you will get from previous year questions, CAPF, CDS, UP PCS, BR PCS, anywhere from wherever you are using the source, है ना। and then your ancient history is good to go. Now let's talk about medieval history. So because I do not have extra page here, so just I'll discuss a few things about medieval history also here. Same goes with medieval history. When we are reading medieval history, we have to focus on 3-4 things. The first of the things that we have to focus is on context. ठीक है। तो जब मैं पाला डायनेस्टी के बारे में बोलता हूँ कि वेयर वर पाला डायनेस्टी, तो यू शुड नो द टाइमलाइन ऑफ पाला डायनेस्टी, you should know the geographical area of Pala dynasty, what was the economy at the time of Pala dynasty, and what were the social life at the time of Pala dynasty, ठीक है। जो 3-4 important high yielding areas हैं, I will teach those things, but you should also focus on that is, वैसे तो पूरा ही important है, nothing you can skip, but especially जो areas हैं जो सबसे ज्यादा important है वो है before Delhi Sultanate जो था, है ना। So it is like early medieval history kind of जो thing है, that you can say. Delhi Sultanate से usually they ask from administration and other things, so that we will discuss. Then third very important part is Bhakti and Sufi movement, so this is very important. Fourth is Vijayanagar Empire, and fifth is Mughal administration, ठीक है। So these are the things that are, these जो ये 5 topics है, they are majorly asked in exam, but apart from that जैसे मराठा एम्पायर है ना, या जो सिख एम्पायर है, सो उससे इतने ज्यादा क्वेश्चंस नहीं पूछे गए, बट ऑब्वियसली बहुत ही briefly I will make notes on that and then I will put it in medieval history, but not a lot of question has been asked from this region कि like Maratha administration, but then I am यू नेवर नो कि इस साल हो सकता है मराठा एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन से क्वेश्चन पूछ लें कि सामंत कौन होते थे ना, या पंत कौन होते थे, लाइक दैट काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चंस कैन बी आस्क्ड फ्रॉम मराठा एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन एज वेल, ठीक है। सो दिस विल बी द जनरल वे थ्रू व्हिच वी विल बी मूविंग टू फ्रॉम द मिडिवल हिस्ट्री। सो अर्ली मिडिवल हिस्ट्री, आप एक चीज याद रखो, इस पे ये मैंने एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री पे भी डिस्कस किया है कि जो पल्लवास थे, so they were the one who were ruling in the South India. Pallavas में महेंद्र वर्मन, नरसिंह वर्मन, so these are famous for the temple building, ठीक है। ये ancient history में हमने पढ़ा हुआ है, so they were famous for that, and then you can read about Pallava administration. The second was Chalukyas or of Badami or Vatapi. So Chalukyas, this also I have put in ancient history notes. उसपे Pulakeshin II was very important, है ना। He fought with Harshavardhan also, and then he defeated Harshavardhan, and then he himself was killed by the Pallavas. Okay, so this is the second thing that you have to read, especially जो इनका Chalukyan art and architecture है. This is very important, ठीक है, because they contributed a lot in art and architecture. Now the new dynasties which are completely new and which were not discussed in ancient history, so the first dynasty was Rashtrakutas, ठीक है। Rashtrakutas were Kannada and Kannada was their mother language. So even so you should know one thing कि before Rashtrakuta dynasty it was जो major languages होती थी court की, those were Sanskrit, Pali and Prakrit. These were the court languages. So some first time जो एक regional language है, so regional Kannada language जो है that comes into picture during the time of Rashtrakutas. Rashtrakutas were during the time of 755 to 975 AD and they were in the Karnataka region. तो ये दो चीजें तो आपको याद रहनी चाहिए, ठीक है। The first important leader was Dandi Durga who founded the empire, and second was Krishnavan. Krishnavan is very important because जो कैलाशनाथ टेम्पल है एलोरा में, which is a very beautiful temple carved out of a single stone. एक पत्थर को काट के they have built a monolithic art or a monolithic temple dedicated to Shiva. It was built by Rashtrakuta, so you have to remember that thing, ठीक है। The next important leader was Amogha Varsha. He ruled for very long time and इन्होंने जैनिज्म को अपनाया था, and Jinasena was the chief preceptor. So Jinasena थे, he was a Jain scholar and he was in the court of अमोघ वर्ष। अब देखो, अब यही क्वेश्चन पढ़ सकता है, कंटेम्पररीज पे दे देगा जीना सेना एंड सपोज दे देगा अजात शत्रु। हालांकि मैंने तो बहुत, आई हैव गिवन यू अ वेरी लॉन्ग शॉट की मतलब बहुत ज्यादा डिफरेंस है इस पे, बट द डिफरेंस वाज नॉट यूजुअली दिस मच, बट व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू गिव यू इज अ कंटेक्स्ट, ठीक है। द कंटेक्स्ट वाज कि जस्ट अ सेकंड ना, so this was the context कि अमोघ वर्षा and Jinasena was during his time and he was a patron and he himself जो अमोघ वर्षा था he himself was a scholar and he wrote a Kannada work that was Kaviraj Marg. ठीक है, apart from that इनकी जो capital थी, so he built a new capital which was Malkhed और Manyakheta. So that was one capital that was built by अमोघ वर्षा. देन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, ठीक है, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में जस्ट लाइक अर्लियर जो किंग था, ही वाज द पिवट, सो ही वाज द बेसिक और द हेड ऑफ द स्टेट, ही वाज दैट द हाईएस्ट सीट, ही सॉट ही सैट ऑन द हाईएस्ट सीट, ठीक है, एंड जो पोजीशन थी दैट वाज हेरिडिटरी, ठीक है. देन दे बिल्ट फोर्ट, दे मेंटेन्ड नेवी, एंड देन जो डिवीजन था, सो प्रोविंस वर कॉल्ड राष्ट्रास एंड राष्ट्रास वर अंडर राष्ट्रपति. सो राष्ट्रपतिज वर लाइक गवर्नर्स, ठीक है, यूजुअली जो रॉयल प्रिंसेस होते थे, सो द सन्स ऑफ किंग, दे वर यूजुअली राष्ट्रपतिज, ठीक है. बट इट हैज आल्सो बीन फाउंड दैट अमोघ वर्षा नेम्ड हिज डॉटर, ठीक है, जिनका नाम था चंद्र बालबे. So he named his daughter also as governor. So there is one example in which he named even a daughter was made the governor of or a rashtrapati of a rashtra. Then rashtras were divided into vishyas, which vishyas जो कि आज के time पे they are like districts and they were under vishyapatis, which is almost like district collector. Then sub division जो था, that those were called bhuktis, ठीक है, which were under bhogapatis and they were directly appointed by central government. Then always village जो था, that was the basic unit of administration, that was during the time of pre-Mauryan time also, Vedic time also, and even today, मतलब आज के टाइम पे भी जो आपकी ग्राम सभा है, that is the basic unit of administration, ठीक है. देन रेवेन्यू के जो आईआरएस होते थे, इंडियन रेवेन्यू सर्विस के जो इक्विवेलेंट होते थे, तो देवर नाड, गौड़ास एंड देश ग्रामुक्ता. सो यू हैव टू रिमेंबर दीज नेम्स, ठीक है, ये इंपॉर्टेंट है कि दीज वर द पीपल हु वर एसोसिएटेड विद द yes, I will, after the class I will share the notes in the group, okay. Then apart from that, next is society and economy. So what kind of society and what kind of economy was there during that time, during the time of Rashtrakutas? So first of all, you have to understand that what was the religion of these people. So Rashtrakutas, they patronized Vaishnavism and Shaivism, but some of them were Jain as well, ठीक है. Then some of the important Buddhist places like Kanheri, Sholapur, Dharwad, so these are associated with their time, and economy जो है that flourished during this time. Then they patronize cultural में, अगर culture में देखा जाए, so they patronize Sanskrit literature, ठीक है. Then Krishna III जो थे, ठीक है, so उनके टाइम पे नाला चंपू and हाल युद्ध, so these are very two important books of that time, so they were written during the time of during his time, ठीक है. तो वहां पे आप पूरा अमोघ वर्ष वंश जो थे, ठीक है, so he was a Jain और इनके जो टीचर थे जीना सेना, so he composed Parshav Bhudaya. So this is a biography of Parshavnath. So Parshavnath was one of the Tirthankaras of Jain, ठीक है. So you can read about the important books that were written during this time, ठीक है. Then the famous जो कन्नड़ा poets थे, this is very important, Pamma and Ponna. So these were during the time of it was during this time. So what you have to see is that जो कन्नड़ा literature था, ठीक है, it started and it flourished during the time of Rashtrakutas. That is the one important thing that you will have to focus. Then read about art and architecture के Ellora, जैसे I've given you the example of Kailasha temple in Ellora, ठीक है, which was कि एक जो single rock था, so उसको काट के उन्होंने टेम्पल बनाया. So they built a temple out of a single rock. So that is one of the that is World Heritage Site also, ठीक है. जो temples थे, they had Dravidian elephant. Then there is one more site, one more place where they had influence was Elephanta or Elephanta caves, ठीक है, जहाँ पे sculptural जो art है इनका that reach its zenith. And Elephanta caves are famous because of the because जो शिवा है, शिवा has been represented in various forms in this region, like Shiva as Nataraja, as Gangadhar, as Ardhanareshwar, and as Shomskanda, ठीक है. And the most important sculptural feature of Elephanta caves is Trimurti, ठीक है, which presents the three aspects of Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva is the creator of the world, he is the preserver of the world, and he is the destroyer of the world. तो ये these are the, तो आप देख सकते हो कि जो sculpture था, in that they had a very big influence, जो राष्ट्रकूटास थे, ठीक है. Apart from sculpture, जो दूसरा influence था हाई, वो कहाँ पे था, that was in कन्नड़ा literature, ठीक है। कंटेक्स्ट फिर से आपको समझ, इफ आई जस्ट गो है तो अराउंड 750 से 950 जो एडी या सीई अब बोलते हैं, ठीक है, उस पे थे, देवर एट दिस टाइम, ठीक है। मोस्टली देवर वैष्णव्स एंड शैवाइट्स, बट सम ऑफ देम वर जैन एज वेल। कन्नड़ा लिटरेचर जो था उसको फ्लरिश किया था, सो दे हैड एन इंपॉर्टेंट रोल इन दैट, एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट कल्चरल कंट्रीब्यूशन एंड एवरीथिंग यू कैन रीड। नेक्स्ट इज पालास, ठीक है। तो पालास देखो, पहले पालास कहाँ पे आएंगे, तो रिमेंबर कि पालास 8 to 10th सेंचुरी में थे, एंड देन देवर इन द आज प्रेजेंट डे बंगाल रीजन, ठीक है, जो आज का बंगाल रीजन है वहां पे ये थे। एंड सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है, देवर बुद्धिस्ट, एंड दे कंट्रीब्यूटेड अ लॉट इन द ग्रोथ ऑफ द बुद्धिज्म, ठीक है, या बुद्धा का जो रिलीजन था, बुद्धिज्म जो था, उसको प्रमोट करने में दे हैड अ वेरी बिग रोल, ठीक है। नाउ दे with this a new style of composition of Sanskrit literature started, which was called Gauda Riti, ठीक है। Then I'll just discuss some of the important aspects of Pala people. Baki you can read these things. So first thing is ki language and education. So during this time Bengali language started, okay, like it started flourishing. So you can see that this was the time, like from 750 AD, jo regional languages the, whether it was Kannada, Bengali, Marathi, so these are all started flourishing now, okay. So most of the empire jo the, they started using the local languages, ठीक है। इनका देखो जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट फीचर था ऑफ पालास वाज दैट दे वर बुद्धिस्ट, ठीक है। एंड सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट जो ग्रेट अतिस्ता, ठीक है, सॉरी, द ग्रेट अतिस्ता, जिनको दीपंकर श्रीजन भी बोला जाता था, सो ही वाज वन ऑफ द वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बुद्धिस्ट स्कॉलर in the history of Buddhism. So he was a very important Buddhist scholar, and he lived during the time of Palas, ठीक है। That is one thing that you have to remember. And then second thing you have to remember is कि जो तिब्बत था, तिब्बत, so Pala had a lot of influence on the Tibetan studies and Tibetan culture, and they also sent missionaries to other countries to spread Buddhism, ठीक है। Apart from that, जो second important feature of Palas था, that was their पेंटिंग्स, एंड स्पेशली जो वज्रयान था, वज्रयान वाज अ तांत्रिक बुद्धिज्म, ठीक है। तांत्रिक बुद्धिज्म, इसका इन्फ्लुएंस बहुत ज्यादा था, स्पेशली इन द मिनिएचर्स। सो जो मिनिएचर्स पेंटिंग थी, दे स्टार्टेड ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ पाला, रिमेंबर दिस थिंग, because we have read about mural paintings were there even during the time of Ajanta Ellora, or even before, if we have read prehistory, so even during the time of this thing, your Paleolithic time and Neolithic time, in the Bhimbetka caves you can find mural paintings, but जो miniature paintings है, that starting during the time of Palas, ठीक है। This is one important thing. अब क्या थे पेंटिंग में, बनाते क्या थे, what they used to draw, so obviously because they were Buddhist, so जो बुद्धिस्ट थीम थे उसके मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट बनाते थे, and mostly they used palm leaf, ठीक है। एंड बिकॉज पाम लीफ इज अ पेरिशेबल मटेरियल, ठीक है, ये पेरिशेबल है, सड़ जाता है, so that's why not a lot of evidence of this has been found in present day, ठीक है। Apart from this thing, the Pala Buddhist art form also existed in the form of bronzes and manuscripts, and again it was transmitted to Southeast Asia, Nepal, Tibet, Burma, Sri Lanka, and other places, okay. Now the most important part of the Palas were, apart from painting, was that they were Buddhist, but they were also tolerant to Hinduism, okay. They propagated Buddhism and they made many monasteries, एंड ड्यूरिंग दिस टाइम जो ऑर्थोडॉक्स फॉर्म ऑफ बुद्धिज्म था, तो मेनली जो हीनयाना था, है ना, हीनयाना, एंड सम सॉर्ट ऑफ महायाना आल्सो, बट महायाना इज नॉट अ ऑर्थोडॉक्स बुद्धिज्म, है ना, इट इज हीनयाना, सो इट वाज कंप्लीटली रिप्लेस्ड बाय वज्रयाना एंड द tantric form of Buddhism, ठीक है। Now during the Pala rule, the famous professor of Vikrashila University, which is Atisha Dipankar Srijan, he visited Tibet to purify the Buddhism there, because he believed that Buddhism has been corrupted in Tibet, so there is a lot of unwanted things that has been added in Buddhism in the Tibet. So he visited there and then he tried to purify it, ठीक है। सो जो तीन अर्ली, जिसको आप हिंदू डायनेस्टीज बोल सकते हो, ठीक है। सो व्हाट वर दोज थ्री इंपॉर्टेंट डायनेस्टीज, सो दे वर चालुक्याज, राष्ट्रकूटाज एंड पालास, ठीक है। अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट देयर वाज वन मोर डायनेस्टी व्हिच वाज कॉल्ड गुर्जरा प्रतिहारा, एंड दीज थ्री डायनेस्टीज, है ना, सो राष्ट्रकूटाज, पालास and Gurjara Pratihara. So they used to fight with each other for Kannauj. There was a city called Kannauj जिसके लिए ये तीनों लड़ते थे, and this fight was called tripartite struggle. ठीक है, so this ये point याद कर लेना. ठीक है, these three dynasties used to fight during the early medieval time. Now, अगर आप early medieval, if you would have been in early medieval India, what did it look like? ठीक है, जैसे आज के टाइम पे we are wearing टी-शर्ट जीन्स, ठीक है, हमारे हाथ में मोबाइल है, मेट्रो से हम we या ट्रेन से या एरोप्लेन से, so we commute by these sources, है ना. Then in economy, some of us are doing jobs, some of us are preparing for government exams, some of us are preparing for some MBA. ठीक है, कोई डॉक्टर है. So there is a context which you can see in present day. So similarly in early medieval India, what did you see? ठीक है, so as I discussed earlier also कि because of land grants, चलो मैं एक चीज और समझा देता हूँ which I have not taught in ancient history classes, that is feudalism, because it is very important for you to understand what feudalism is. ठीक है, सपोज ये एक कंट्री है, दिस इज अ कंट्री ए. ठीक है, इस कंट्री का जो किंग है, उस किंग का नाम है सपोज एस. ठीक है, सो एस इज द किंग ऑफ दिस कंट्री. नाउ कैन ही रूल अलोन? क्या वो अकेले पूरे कंट्री को रूल कर सकता है? ऑब्वियसली नॉट. सो व्हाट विल ही नीड? ही विल नीड अ काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर. ठीक है, काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर टू असिस्ट हिम. सो सम विल असिस्ट हिम इन economic matters, some will assist him in military matters. So different council of ministers will assist him in different kind of matters. But is it enough? Obviously it is not enough. So that's why he will have to divide his empire into different, what you will say in present time, states या provinces. ठीक है, and each state will have their own sovereign, जो कि आज के टाइम पे आप जिसको चीफ मिनिस्टर बोल सकते हो, which will rule that place. ठीक है, so what feudalism at that time was कि जो king था, he will give land grants. ठीक है, he will grant land. So for example, I have given this land to P. ठीक है, so what that means is कि P will be कि king will be the ultimate owner of this land, but immediate owner will be P. So P क्या करेगा? P will collect the land revenue. यहाँ पे जो भी लैंड रेवेन्यू होगा, दैट इज नाउ नॉट माय हेडेक, इट विल बी द हेडेक ऑफ पी. ठीक है, ही विल हैव हिज ओन कीप, या उनका खुद का महल होगा वेयर ही विल लिव. ही विल हैव हिज ओन मिलिट्री. ठीक है, नाउ व्हाट ही विल डू, ही विल पे मी ट्रिब्यूट एवरी ईयर या मंथली, जो भी डिसाइड होता था. सो एवरी ईयर पी विल प्रोवाइड मी ट्रिब्यूट. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, इफ देयर इज अ वॉर, ठीक है, सो अगर वॉर है तो किंग के अंदर एक तो रॉयल आर्मी होगी. ठीक है, तो इमीडिएटली अंडर किंग देयर विल बी अ रॉयल आर्मी. ठीक है, which will fight and which will be under the king's command, but then he also maintains military. So during the time of war, he will provide his military to king. Okay, that was what he will do. He will have to provide his military to king, and then he will also maintain law and order. So in this region, he will also have to maintain law and order. So this is what feudalism was. Okay, now the thing with feudalism was कि suppose P जो है, he collects a lot of land revenue and he becomes very powerful. So there are chances कि P will fight with king, or if he will not fight with king, then at least he will establish an independent state. ठीक है, वो पी के वो किंग को जो है, किंग को जो ऐसे, he will not accept the suzerainty of S and he will make his own kingdom. ठीक है, and this used to happen a lot in the medieval, even in the ancient times, in the medieval times also. ठीक है, आज के टाइम पे पॉसिबल नहीं है. आज के टाइम पे अगर मध्य प्रदेश चाहे तो वो इंडिया से अलग नहीं हो सकता है. ठीक है, बिकॉज जो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट है, इट इज वेरी वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग इन कंपैरिजन टू स्टेट गवर्नमेंट, एंड it has been made deliberately in that way कि state should not be powerful enough to challenge the central government. ठीक है, but at that time it was nothing like that. So I understand, I hope you have understood what feudalism was. ठीक है, because it is very important to understand कि future में जो चीजें हुई थी. I'll just stop sharing screen because थोड़ा सा इस पे blurriness आ रही है, and then I'll just share it again. Okay, so because of the large scale land grants and large scale changes of land, जो land feudalism है वो डेवलप हुआ. ठीक है, अब feudalism की एक प्रॉब्लम और होती थी. ठीक है, see the questions I will take at the end. ठीक है, अगर आप ये सब questions ना I will take after the class. So because of land grants क्या हुआ, there was a lot of land feudalism that developed. ठीक है, लैंड फ्यूडलिज्म डेवलप, तो उसके कारण क्या हुआ कि there was a decline in trade and commerce, loss of mobility of artisans, peasants, and unequal distribution of power. Now, why is that? Because suppose एक प्रोविंस में के करेंसी चलती है, एक में सी करेंसी चलती है, ठीक है, देन हाउ विल यू ट्रेड? जैसे आज के प्रेजेंट के टाइम पे भी है कि सपोज दैट्स व्हाई जैसे रुपी और रूबल का वो चलता है, एक्सचेंज चलता है कि इंडिया वांट्स कि दे शुड बी एबल टू ट्रेड विद अदर कंट्रीज इन देयर ओन करेंसी, ठीक है। तो आज की जो ग्लोबल करेंसी है वो डॉलर है, बट उस टाइम पे ऐसा नहीं था। सो डिफरेंट स्टेट्स इफ दे वांट टू ट्रेड विथ one another, then how will they trade with one another? That was the one problem that they faced. So that's why there was a decline in the trade and commerce. Second was proliferation of caste. Now castes increased. When it started, there were only 4 castes: Brahmans, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. And apart from these 4 castes, there were people who were outside the caste system, which were untouchable. ठीक है, बट यहाँ पे क्या हुआ, बिकॉज ऑफ लॉट ऑफ फॉरेनर्स स्टार्टेड कमिंग टू इंडिया बिकॉज ऑफ इन्वेजन, है ना, and then lot of intermarriages took place. So that's why there was an increase in the caste, because to include them in the caste means to make new class, new caste, ठीक है। इस पे जो एक important caste जो है which developed during this time, that was कायस्थ caste, जो आज के टाइम पे some of them are called श्रीवास्तव और I think Sinhas also, है ना। जो कायस्थ caste थी वो developed हुई, and they were scribes, ठीक है, mainly they used to maintain accounts, and that's why because they were educated class, so they threatened or they undermined the monopoly of Brahmins as writers and scribes, ठीक है। Now because of there was a decline in trade, ठीक है, so जो वैश्यास थे उनकी जो कंडीशन है वो काफी हिट की, it was not a very good condition, ठीक है। Then Rajput community emerged, so they were originally Kshatriyas, but but then within Kshatriya there is a new community arose, that was Rajput community, ठीक है। And apart from that, जो guild of merchant था, which was till now a fluid caste system. So I talked about guilds in the ancient time. So in ancient time जो guild था, it was not a caste kind of guild, but it was a trade kind of guild, कि जहाँ पे वो trade secret में बना के रखते थे. But by the time medieval India came, जो guilds थे, they became specialized and they became caste centric, ठीक है। तो अलग अलग especially post Gupta period पे जो guilds है, they became caste centric, ठीक है। जो ब्राह्मण्स थे, they were still at the time of even at that time they were at the top of the social hierarchy, and they had freedom from death sentence. So जो ब्राह्मण्स थे, they cannot be given, they cannot be punished, that they should be killed, that was not there. They were exempted from taxes, so they do not have to pay any taxes. They got precedence on roads, so if they are walking, so Brahmins will walk first. And the most severe punishment for Brahmin was banishment, कि मतलब उनको kingdom से बाहर कर दिया जाता था. That was the extreme punishment for Brahmins. And जो ब्राह्मण हत्या था, killing of a Brahman was the worst crime, the most severe crime, ठीक है। जो वैश्यास थे, because there was a decline in trade, so their level जो है, it was degraded to that of Shudras, ठीक है। In fact, when Al-Baruni visited India, he says that he did not find any difference between Vaishyas and Shudras, ठीक है। एंड इस टाइम पे वैश्यराज को जो है कुछ आइटम्स थे, फॉर एग्जांपल वाइन, मीट, साल्ट, ये जो चीजें थी, सो दे कुड नॉट सेल दीज थिंग्स, है ना। सो इवन जो उनका ट्रेड था उस पे देयर वाज रेस्ट्रिक्शन, ठीक है। नाउ शूद्रास दे वर द मोस्ट न्यूमरस सेक्शन इन दिस कास्ट हायरार्की, एंड देयर वर 8 शूद्रास व्हिच वर कॉल्ड अष्ट शूद्रास, ठीक है, which emerged during the time of early medieval period, which were like Vyadha, Bhad, Kol, Kocha, Haddi, Doma, Jala, Pagatita, Vyalagrahi, and Chandala. So these were the 8 Ashtashudras which were there. And then Antayajas. So Antayajas were someone who were untouchable. So if you will form a caste hierarchy, तो वो इस तरीके से pyramid के shape पे बनेगी, ठीक है। And in the top will be Brahmans, so they will be least, numerically least होंगे, but they will be at top. Then there will be Kshatriyas, then there will be Vaishyas, and here you will find Shudras. But outside this 4 caste system were a lot of people who were untouchables या Antayajas, ठीक है। Now Al-Baruni jo hai, he was a traveler, so he mentions about the 8 groups of people who were the members who did not find their who did not belong to the four caste system, ठीक है, like washerman, shoemaker, juggler, जो ये लोग थे, so they were outside this thing, ठीक है। देन इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ मैरिज एंड स्टेटस ऑफ वुमेन, तो उस टाइम पे शादी वगैरह कैसा होती थी, तो इसके दो सोर्सेस है, फर्स्ट है स्मृति चंद्रिका एंड सेकंड इज स्मृत्य सारा, ठीक है। तो इस पे पहली चीज तो थी जो इंटरकास्ट मैरिजेस थे, दे वर नॉट अलाउड, ठीक है। so there was a strict caste hierarchy and there was strict class stratification, social stratification, ठीक है। then there were also the marriages between brahmins and shudras were completely forbidden, ठीक है। so they especially could not marry, ठीक है। then this is important, this point is important, that एक टेक्स्ट है जिसका नाम है वैजयंती, ठीक है। जो वैजयंती टेक्स्ट है, इट इज अ कमेंट्री ऑन मिताक्षरा। नाउ मिताक्षरा इज अ हिंदू लीगल टेक्स्ट इवन एट प्रेजेंट टाइम। अब अगर कोई मैरिज या डिवोर्स या सक्सेशन राइट है ना, या एडॉप्शन से रिलेटेड कोई केस आता है, तो जो कोर्ट्स है वो मिताक्षरा जो लॉ है उसको पढ़ते हैं, ठीक है। तो वजयंती जो है, इट इज अ कमेंट्री ऑन वन अनदर बुक विच इज मिताक्षरा, विच इज अ लीगल टेक्स्ट ऑन एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री एंड मोस्टली रिलेटेड विद द सिविल लॉज, ठीक है। बिकॉज इवन एट प्रेजेंट टाइम जो क्रिमिनल लॉज हैं वो तो सेम है सबके लिए, ठीक है। सो वी आर डिस्कसिंग अबाउट सिविल लॉज, और इस पे इट सेज कि देयर वाज पॉलीगैमी इन रॉयल क्लासेस, ठीक है। रॉयल क्लास में पॉलीगैमी थी। women was kept dependent, so that means ki women were dependent first on their father and later on their in their husband. So not much has changed even today. Even today the social structure is that a lot of women are dependent on their father and husband, okay. But obviously a lot of social mobility is possible in today's time, but it was not possible in that time. However, they had right to residence, so they could live in the home of their father or their husband and they could not banish them from their home. And second thing is, even if she has committed adultery, so adultery means ki if a person has a relation with someone outside their marriage, okay, that is called adultery. So even if she has committed adultery, so she was like maintenance was still available to her, so you can divorce her but still you will have to give maintenance for. So in this context, at least you can say that they were very liberal, because a lot of societies, स्पेशली जो अरबिक सोसाइटीज है, वहां पे एडल्ट्री वगैरह की जो पनिशमेंट है, इट इज ऑलमोस्ट डेथ, ठीक है। सो हियर इट वाज मोस्टली पनिशमेंट एंड देन आल्सो वुमेन दैट यू कैन यू विल हैव टू प्रोवाइड मेंटेनेंस टू द वुमेन, ठीक है। उसके अलावा सम ऑफ द लिटरेचर जो था वो इट वाज मोस्टली मीडियोकर, बट सम कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट जो जैसे राज तरंगनी ऑफ कल्हाना, सो इट वाज अ हिस्ट्री ऑफ कश्मीर, ठीक है। गीता गोविंदा ऑफ जयदेवा, ठीक है। सो जस्ट रीड अबाउट दीज थिंग्स कि जो इंपॉर्टेंट कमेंट्रीज थी विच वाज रिटन ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ medieval history which were written, and you can read about these. I have shared it in the notes, ठीक है। so यहाँ पे फ्यूडलिज्म, आई हैव डिस्कस्ड अबाउट फ्यूडलिज्म। सो फ्यूडलिज्म मैंने आपको पहले ही समझा दिया है ना कि व्हाट वाज लैंड ग्रांट, व्हाट वाज द लैंड ग्रांट, उसका मतलब क्या था। लैंड ग्रांट्स वर और नॉट जस्ट गिवन टू पीपल बट दे वर आल्सो गिवन टू ब्राह्मण्स, ठीक है। और ब्राह्मण्स को जो लैंड ग्रांट था, जिसको ब्रह्मदेय भी कहा जाता था, सो वहां पे देयर वर फ्यू थिंग्स लाइक रॉयल ट्रूप्स कुड नॉट एंटर इनटू दैट लैंड, गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल्स एंड डिस्ट्रिक्ट पुलिस कुड नॉट एंटर इनटू दैट लैंड, और वहां पे कंप्लीट ऑटोनॉमी होती थी ब्राह्मण्स को, ठीक है। जो लैंड ग्रांट्स था, इट वाज स्टार्टेड बाय द सातवाहनास, ये भी मैंने पहले डिस्कस किया हुआ है। एंड ऑल दिस लेड टू, इसका इम्प्लीकेशन क्या हुआ, सिमिलर सी बात है, डिसइंटीग्रेशन ऑफ स्टेट, क्योंकि जो बिकॉज यू आर शेयरिंग योर लैंड रेवेन्यू विथ your sources of income with someone else, so what it led to was the disintegration of the state was divided into मल्टीपल फ्रैक्चर्स, और फिर वहां से क्या हुआ, जो हमारा इंडियन सोसाइटी है, इट वीकेंड। दैट्स व्हाई इट वाज पॉसिबल, बिकॉज ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ अलेक्जेंडर और ईरानियन जो बाइजेंटाइन एम्पायर था, दे कुड नॉट इन्वेड इंडिया बिकॉज स्टिल देयर वाज अ वेरी पावरफुल एम्पायर्स लाइक मौर्याज एंड नंदाज एंड मौर्याज एंड गुप्ताज, है ना। बट because of this feudalism, there was a fracture in the society, there was a fracture in the administration of the state, and because of that it weakened the authority or the power of state, ठीक है। so that was one problem that India faced during the time of medieval early medieval time, okay। so this was, so that is what I have told। so यहाँ पे just read it, ये वाला जो पार्ट है ना फ्यूडलिज्म वाला, इसको बहुत ये रटने वाला पार्ट नहीं है। you have to understand कि what feudalism was and how it changed the whole फ्यूचर ऑफ इंडिया, ठीक है। तो वही चीज पूरा का पूरा यहाँ पे डिस्कस किया गया है। फिर देन जो फॉरेन कंट्रीज थे वो रिलेशन, सी बिकॉज दीज आर हाई यील्डिंग क्लासेस, so obviously I cannot discuss everything at length, ठीक है। so I've just touched into the important points, and then you just read all the things that has been covered into these points. यहाँ पे देखो एक चीज मिसिंग है, I want to add a few factual points from Lucent as well, ठीक है। तो अभी तो because I have to make note, making notes from one source, like the basic source, तो वहां से तो आई विल गिव यू वन नोट्स, ठीक है, जो भी मैं शेयर कर रहा हूँ वो मैं दे दूंगा, एंड देन within 2 to 3 days I will give you the final notes which will cover everything, ठीक है। जो medieval history, old NCERT plus new NCERT plus Lucent, it will cover all these 3 parts, ठीक है। तो जस्ट गो थ्रू जो फाइनल टेक्स्ट है उस पर भी आप एक बार फिर से वापस जाके पूरी चीजें देख लेना, सो दैट इफ न्यू पॉइंट्स हैज बीन एडेड सो यू कैन जस्ट गो थ्रू देम, ठीक है। नाउ द नेक्स्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पोर्शन है जो मेरे को पढ़ाना था, जो पढ़ाना है, दैट इज दिल्ली सल्तनत, ठीक है। सो अभी तक जो सिविलाइजेशंस थे इंडिया में, दे वर मोस्टली हिंदू, बुद्धिस्ट और जैन सिविलाइजेशन, ठीक है। नाउ जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड वन मोर थिंग बिफोर आई डिस्कस अदर थिंग्स दैट विल हेल्प यू इन अदर पेपर्स आल्सो। यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड कि ऑल रिलीजन एंड द वर्ल्ड व्यू ऑफ रिलीजन इज नॉट सेम, ठीक है। हर धर्म का डिफरेंट वर्ल्ड व्यू होता है। तो जो हिंदुइज्म था, बुद्धिज्म था एंड जैनिज्म, एंड लेटर ऑन इन 16th in from the time of Guru Nanak, so in 14th century till the time of 17th century, Sikhism also developed. So these are overlapping religions, ठीक है। These are the religions which are overlapping, कि a person can be a Buddhist and he can be a Hindu also, ठीक है। You can worship Buddha also and you can worship Rama also, ठीक है। Similarly, Jains जो है, they can be Hindu also, Hindus can be Jains also, and same goes for Sikhs, ठीक है। So it was not either or, ठीक है, it was and, कि यहाँ पे ये नहीं था कि इफ यू आर फॉलोइंग दिस देन यू कैन नॉट फॉलो दिस, ठीक है। सो दीज आर कॉल्ड धार्मिक रिलीजन्स। धार्मिक रिलीजन्स मींस दे वर फॉर्म्ड इन इंडिया, ठीक है। नाउ देयर आर 3 रिलीजन्स व्हिच आर कॉल्ड अब्राहमिक रिलीजन्स, ठीक है, व्हिच आर जुडाइज्म, क्रिश्चियनिटी एंड इस्लाम, ठीक है। नाउ दीज जो ये रिलीजन है, बिकॉज एक एक डिफरेंस इन रिलीजन का ये भी था कि देयर इज नो वन बुक दैट यू हैव टू फॉलो, ठीक है। यू हैव वेदास आल्सो, यू हैव महाभारत आल्सो, यू हैव गीता आल्सो, एंड यू हैव डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ फिलॉसफीज आल्सो। यू आर फ्री टू चूज व्हाटएवर you want to choose, ठीक है। But in these religions there are certain texts that you'll have to follow, like for Christianity there is Bible, in Islam there is Quran, so you'll have to follow those texts. So whatever written in that you will have to follow it. You do not have the choice कि मैं एक लाइन फॉलो कर लेता हूँ, एक लाइन फॉलो नहीं कर लूंगा, ठीक है। I will just follow this part of the book and I will not follow this part of the book. You do not have that choice. You'll have to follow each and every word of those book, ठीक है। तो यहाँ पे जो सिस्टम है of these societies and Indian society, it was quite different, ठीक है, because their world view was quite different. जो इन फेथ का जो वर्ल्ड व्यू है और इन फेथ का जो वर्ल्ड व्यू था ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ मिडिवल टाइम, इन मॉडर्न टाइम, इवन टुडे आल्सो, सो इट वाज कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट, ठीक है। नाउ अ डिफरेंट वर्ल्ड व्यू कैन आल्सो एग्जिस्ट विथ वन अनदर अनलेस दे आर नॉट इन कंट्रास्ट विथ वन अनदर, ठीक है। सो ये पॉइंट मैं इसलिए डिस्कस कर रहा हूं क्योंकि अब जो है, अब अ न्यू वर्ल्ड व्यू वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इन इंडिया फ्रॉम द time of Muhammad bin Qasim, who was the first Arab invader who came to India, ठीक है। तो यहाँ पे बट देखो ये जो चीज है ना, ये सोशल स्ट्रक्चर की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ। जो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है, you will read and you will see that it still continued the same form जो कि मौर्यन टाइम पे था, which was timed at the time of Gupta period. So the administration was more or less same, ठीक है। इट वॉज द सोसाइटी एंड द वर्ल्ड व्यू ऑफ द सोसाइटी एंड द वे एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन वॉज स्ट्रक्चर्ड, ठीक है। तो वो इस बेसिस पे था। सो 712 AD, ठीक है, मोहम्मद बिन कासिम, ही वॉज एन अरब, सो ही इन्वेडेड सिंध पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया, ठीक है। सिंध जो है आज के टाइम पे इट इज अ प्रोविंस ऑफ पाकिस्तान, ठीक है। सो ही इन्वेडेड दैट पार्ट एंड ही ट्राइड टू मर्ज इट विथ उमैयद किंगडम, ठीक है। सो एट दैट टाइम जो रूलर थे सिंध के, दैट वाज राजा दाहिर, राजा दाहिर, एंड द फाइट बिटवीन कासिम एंड दाहिर हैज बीन मेंशन्ड इन अ बुक कॉल्ड चांचनामा। आई थिंक मैंने ये चीज ऐड नहीं किया नोट्स पे, तो जस्ट राइट इट डाउन, ठीक है। चांचनामा जो है, इट इज द बुक व्हिच डिस्कस अबाउट द invasion of Muhammad bin Qasim at the fight between Raja Dahir and Muhammad bin Qasim. ठीक है? Then he defeated and killed Raja Dahir, and then the people of Sindh were given the status of Zimmis. ठीक है? Now what is Zimmi या Dhimmi? ठीक है? Later on it became Dhimmi. What is Dhimmi? So basically the area in which Islam is the major religion. So in those areas, those people who do not follow uh, Islam, है ना? So they will have to pay a certain tax or certain money to the government, to the Islamic government, and in the lieu of that money, or because they are paying the taxes or money, they will be given the status of dhimmi or protected people, that they will be not attacked by other Muslims because they are paying taxes in the Islamic government. Okay, so they were given the status of zimmis, and Qasim was the first to levy jizya. So jizya is an Islamic tax which is imposed on non-Muslims. Okay, but because even the time of Sindh, even the time of 712 AD, so there was a very powerful Pratihara kingdom, okay, which was there in the Gurjara Pratihara, so Gujarat area. So because of that, he could not invade further. Okay, so that is the first invasion, and then for around 200 years, कोई ऐसा major invasion नहीं हुआ during this time. The next invasion was by Mahmud of Ghazni. Okay, so it was very famous. 17 बार इसने 17 times he attacked, and then he plundered the Somnath temple. Okay, Somnath temple is in Gujarat. So he attacked and plundered Somnath temple. So loot and plunder. So the wealth of India was the major purpose for his raid, because he wanted कि whatever loot that he will get from India, he will take that money and he will use it for the welfare of his own subjects. ठीक है? Now हम इनके टाइम के बारे में कैसे जानते हैं? महमूद गजनी के टाइम पे जो फिरदौसी was his port, his court poet, ठीक है? And then he wrote one book that is called Shahnama, and from Shahnama we know about this. And then another person in his court was Al-Baruni, ठीक है? Who wrote Kitab-e-Hind, very famous, which was an account of India. So ये दो किताबों के through we know about the rule of Mahmud of Ghazni. Now what he did, he invaded and he plundered the temples, and especially the Somnath temples. So he plundered the riches of temple. But because of this, जो northwest India था, it became very weak, which paved way for further Turkish and Arabic and Afghan conquest of India. Okay. Now the second thing was कि there was one kingdom, small kingdom था, but very powerful kingdom, that was Hindu Shahi kingdom. Okay, and it was the one which was guarding the gates of Hindustan, which was guarding the gates of India, and it was completely destroyed by Mahmud Ghazni. And because of that, जो India के gates थे, they were open for foreign invaders. ठीक है? And then he included जो Pakistan, जो Punjab है and the Afghanistan है, so he included these two regions as part of his own kingdom. ठीक है? So that was Mahmud of Ghazni. So he was the one major. First was Muhammad bin Qasim, but the first one who truly impacted India was Mahmud Ghazni. Then from Mahmud Ghazni came Muhammad Ghori. So he was the vassal of Ghazni, vassal like chief minister समझ लो. Vassal actually जो feudals होते थे, so जो feudal का जो king होता था, उसको feudal उसको king बोला जाता था, ठीक है, या सुल्तान, whatever you want to call him. And then जो feudal lords होते थे, उनको vassal बोला जाता था, ठीक है. So he was the vassal of. So Muhammad Ghori was the vassal of Ghazni, but after Ghazni died, so he became independent. Then अभी recent movie भी आई थी पृथ्वीराज, ठीक है, so उसमें मोहम्मद गोरी की स्टोरी है. So he fought with पृथ्वीराज चौहान. So there was first battle of Taran. It was in 1191, in which he was defeated. Muhammad Ghori was defeated, but in 1192 he defeated Prithviraj Chauhan. And then in 1193, or just check the year, 93 or 94, there was one more battle that is called Battle of Chandawar, in which he defeated Jaichand also, okay, of Kannauj. And then he established the Turkish rule. So remember one thing, he was Arab, Muhammad bin Qasim was Arab, and Muhammad Ghori was Turkish. अब इसके बाद जो majority जितने भी रहेंगे ना, most will be Turkish, unless I'll tell them कि they were Afghans. तो जो major जो rulers थे इंडिया के, they were Turkish. Now why did Hindu kingdoms failed? ठीक है, why at that time these Hindu kingdoms failed? So the most important reason was lack of unity and mutual conflict. Okay, they did not had a common worldview. They used to bicker, they used to fight with one another, and they tried to destabilize the empire of one another. That was the main reason. Okay, second was military method was out of date. ठीक है, जो Muslims थे, they used cavalry. So cavalry मतलब जो घुड़सवारी होती है ना, horses, and horses used to quickly move, and जो Hindus थे, they were over reliant on elephants. So obviously elephants are very slow, ठीक है. So obviously जो horses हैं, you will be able to defeat them. Then जो एक religious zeal था, ठीक है, कि attacking in the name of faith, in the name of religion. So that was there in the mind of Ghazni or Ghori, but that was not in the mind of Hindu rulers. Okay, so it also provided a lot of stimulus apart from greed for wealth, because India was a wealthy country. And the final thing was, which is a problem of even today. Okay, एक चीज मैं discuss करूंगा. Hindu kingdoms were always defensive, which is never a good position to be. Okay, offensive defense is always better than defensive offense. ठीक है. सो इट इज ऑलवेज, जो इंडिया है वो अभी डिफेंसिव ऑफेंस करता है, ऑफेंसिव डिफेंस नहीं करता है. ठीक है. इट हैज चेंज्ड फॉर इन पास्ट फ्यू इयर्स, बट स्टिल दैट इज द पॉलिसी व्हाट वी फॉलो. सो इन हिंदू किंगडम्स वर ऑलवेज डिफेंसिव. सो सी, देखो हिंदू किंगडम, इसका रिलीजन देखो, रिलीजन जो होता है ना, वी नो मैटर व्हाट वी से कि रिलीजन मैटर नहीं करता है, वी आर सेकुलर स्टेट एंड व्हाटएवर. यस, वी आर सेकुलर स्टेट इन प्रिंसिपल, बट जो रिलीजन होता है किसी भी कंट्री का, इट हैज अ बिग इन्फ्लुएंस इन द वे द पीपल थिंक इन दैट कंट्री. ठीक है. इवन नाउ जो इंडिया है, एंड आई वाज कल मैं एक डिस्कशन देख रहा था, सो दे वर टॉकिंग अबाउट द इंडिया पाकिस्तान रिलेशंस. And right now, if you're reading newspaper, you know that the position of Pakistan is very bad. Like economically, they are ruined. They are in a very bad position. They are not able to pay their debts. Okay. Hopefully, IMF will give them some credit, तो जिसके कारण वो स्टेबलाइज कर लेंगे, और अरब कंट्री भी सब कुछ पैसा दे देंगे. अदरवाइज दे आर इन अ वेरी बैड पोजीशन. नाउ सी, देयर आर अ फ्यू थिंग्स, लाइक अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल इन इंडिया, दे फील वेरी हैप्पी when such thing happens ki Pakistan in a very bad position economically, but that should not be the case. Why? First, because we should empathize with people of Pakistan, with anyone. ठीक है. अगर इतनी ज्यादा like फ्लोर के जो प्राइसेस है, आई वाज सेइंग इन दिसंबर इटसेल्फ इट हैज रोज बाय 50%. ठीक है. सो इफ कॉमन पीपल आर नॉट एबल टू अफोर्ड फ्लोर, मतलब आटा नहीं खरीद पा रहे हैं, सो वी शुड बी एबल टू एटलीस्ट एम्पैथाइज विद देम, बिकॉज दे आर आल्सो लाइक अस. देयर इज अ मिडिल क्लास इन दैट, लोअर क्लास जो है, सो दे ऑलवेज सफर. ठीक है. सो एंड सेकंड थिंग इज, even if we cannot empathize with Pakistan, then at least think in this way, that a destabilized Pakistan is always bad for India than a stabilized Pakistan. ठीक है. अगर वहां पे कंट्री डिस्टेबलाइज हो जाता है या टेररिज्म वगैरह पड़ जाता है, सो ऑब्वियसली देन इट विल हर्ट इंडिया इवन मोर. ठीक है. बट इन दैट कंटेक्स्ट, व्हाट आई लाइक्ड मोस्ट वाज दैट वन ऑफ द पाकिस्तानी स्कॉलर वाज वेरी ऑनेस्ट, एंड ही सेड दिस इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन इंडिया एंड पाकिस्तान, that if India would have been in a position of weakness, कि अगर इंडिया डिस्टेबलाइज हो रहा होता और इंडिया would have been in a very weak position, Pakistan would have 100% attacked India by now. It would have attacked India, and it would have tried to ruin India, and at least it would have tried to take back Kashmir. But that is what India is. It will never use weak position of its neighbor to further its strategic goal. ठीक है. And this is where your philosophies, the philosophies of a country comes into being. ठीक है. अमेरिका जो, it is a very very capitalist society, very profit seeking society, so they look at everything from that perspective. So that is what India is. That is what India has always been. ठीक है. कि we as a country, we will not take advantage of weakness of some other country. But if we all know this thing, if you will read the history of 1947 Kashmir War, 1962, 1971, 1965. Why there was 1965 war? Because after 1962 war, in which we were defeated by China, so Pakistan thought that India is a very weak country and we will attack and defeat them. So obviously, whenever they got a chance to attack us, they always attacked us. Okay. So that is the difference. That is the difference that the philosophies of your country has in your psyche, and it always plays a role whether someone accepts it or does not accept it. The people who are not accepting it also have the privilege that the society provides, कि you are not accepting it. That is also a privilege. ठीक है. So actually why I'm saying is because you can link all these things. है ना. कोई भी चीज ना सिलो नहीं होती, एक ही दिन में नहीं डेवलप हो जाती है. It takes hundreds and thousands of years to evolve, whether it is your foreign policy or your administration, anything. Then after Muhammad Ghori, ठीक है, when Muhammad Ghori died, it led to establishment of Delhi Sultanate. ठीक है, दिल्ली सल्तनत में 5 डायनेस्टीज थी. ठीक है, फर्स्ट वाज स्लेव डायनेस्टी, देन खिलजी डायनेस्टी, देन सैयद डायनेस्टी, Tughlaq dynasty, and then the final one was Lodi dynasty. Okay, that was the last dynasty. So slave dynasty, it starts with Qutbuddin Aibak. Qutbuddin Aibak was slave of Gori, and then he was made the Sultan of India. So he himself became Sultan of India, and he ruled only for 4 years. ठीक है, अब देखो, I can not discuss each and every part of his rule, so you just read it. I'll just tell you some of the important parts, that he was the slave of Gori, but later on he became the king. तो उस टाइम पे जो किंग थे, तो ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ दिल्ली सल्तनत जो किंग था उनको सुल्तान बोला जाता था. ठीक है, ये पॉइंट याद रखना. सो ही बिकेम द सुल्तान ऑफ दिल्ली एंड ही मेड लाहौर हिज कैपिटल. ठीक है, तो ये पॉइंट इंपॉर्टेंट है. एंड देन देयर वाज अ इंपॉर्टेंट स्कॉलर हसन निजामी वाज हु वाज इन हिज कोर्ट, and then he started construction of Qutub Minar, which is in Delhi, and which was finished by Iltutmish. And then he was playing Chaugan, which is horse polo, and while playing horse polo he died, Qutubuddin Aibak. He was followed by his slave who was Iltutmish, and he belonged to Ilbarari tribe, so that's why इसको Ilbarari dynasty भी बोला जाता है. ठीक है, Iltutmish की जो dynasty है. Then he shifted capital from Lahore to Delhi. ठीक है, सो जो दिल्ली था, जिसको दिल्ली का भी बोला जाता था, दिल्ली का, इट वाज आल्सो कॉल्ड दिल्ली का ड्यूरिंग द एंशिएंट टाइम्स. सो इवन द राजपूत्स, दे हैड, इवन बिफोर राजपूत जो इंद्रप्रस्थ था, सो दैट वाज दिल्ली का ओल्डर नेम था. ठीक है, सो इट वाज द कैपिटल, बट इट ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ दिल्ली सल्तनत इट वाज हिम, इल्तुतमिश, हु मूव्ड द capital, and then he saved India from the wrath of not Genghis Khan, but Genghis Khan and Mongol policy. ठीक है, so he tried to avoid कि जो Mongols हैं, they should invade India by just ignoring all the things that Mongols were doing. ठीक है, so mainly he did that. Then he received a Mansoor. What is Mansoor? तो ये it was a, so in Islam during that time, during the initial time of Islam, जो there was one person that is called Caliphate या Khalifa. ठीक है, that was like head of all Muslims in this world. ठीक है, so if the Khalifa has given like his blessing to someone, it is like religiously ordained ki okay, religiously it has been accepted. Okay, so he got a Mansoor from Abbasid Caliph, so that means he became the legal sovereign ruler of India. Okay, one important thing he did was, and which was different, and it only happened once in the medieval time, was that he nominated his daughter, which is Razia Sultana. So he nominated his daughter as the next in line, like next sultan of country. And then that was the first hereditary succession also, because Ghori's because see, Ghazni Ghori was the vassal of Ghazni. Then Qutbuddin Aibak was slave of Ghori, and Iltutmish was slave of Aibak. But this was the first hereditary succession in which his daughter Razia was to become the सुल्ताना ऑफ कंट्री. ठीक है, उसके बाद कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट जो स्कॉलर्स है, यू कैन रीड अबाउट दिस थिंग. देन ही फिनिश्ड कुतुब मीनार, एंड देन ही आल्सो बिल्ट कुव्वतुल इस्लाम मॉस्क इन अजमेर. ठीक है, देन ही स्टार्टेड द अरबिक कॉइनेज इन इंडिया, और जो पहला इन्होंने इंट्रोड्यूस किया था, विच वाज सिल्वर टका. सिल्वर टका वाज 175 ग्राम्स जो था, उसका वेट होता था, एंड इट बिकेम द स्टैंडर्ड कॉइन इन द इंडिया. ठीक है, द सेकंड मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग ही डिड वाज कि 40 इंपॉर्टेंट नोबल्स, ठीक है, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट लीडर्स he appointed, which was called Chalagni. ठीक है, and these became very important, and they became very influential over the time, जो nobles थे. ठीक है, after him Razia Sultana came, but obviously because she was a woman, so a lot of governors did not accept her, and basically she was assassinated. बस इतना याद कर लो. ठीक है, she was killed. She ruled for some years, but her rule was never stable, and she was basically assassinated. Then came Balban. ठीक है, तो जो लास्ट रूलर था, दैट वाज नसरुद्दीन महमूद. सो ही वाज द वजीर ऑफ नसरुद्दीन महमूद, एंड देन ही बिकेम द sultan. Now one thing I discussed in ancient history also, so he was the first ruler who started the theory of divine origin. ठीक है, so he said that जो king होता है, जो राजा होता है, they are the zil ilahi. That means he is the shadow of God in the earth. So king is like equal to God. King is almost like God. So king should be worshipped. So that's why he bought new customs in court, like prostration, that is sijda, which means कि जैसे हम if we go to temple or if someone is reading namaz, तो वो बिल्कुल जो सर जमीन पे रख के in the front of deity or in the front of God, so that now you will have to do in front of sultan. And then paibos means to kiss the feet of sultan. ठीक है, all this was introduced so that he wanted to show his superiority over the nobles. Then he also introduced Nowruz. Now Nowruz is a Persian first festival, ठीक है, जो Zoroastrians हैं उनका festival था, so it was introduced by him. And during this time he favored the Turkish nobility, and जो Indian Muslims थे, they were not given high places in his court. ठीक है, apart from that उनके spies थे जिनको barids बोलते थे, which used to take note of what the nobles are doing. ठीक है. Then another important thing he did was to establish a military department which was called Diwane Arz. ये चीजें याद रखना है ना, these departments, remember their name because it is asked in exams. ठीक है, so Diwane Arz was established by Balban, and they also did the branding of horse. ठीक है, however he एक जगह जहाँ पे where he failed, in which the Balban failed, was that he could not save India from the Mongol invasions. Now just a brief about Mongols. So Mongols were a tribe of Central Asia, okay, and they used to invade all the countries and then they used to ruin those countries. ठीक है, वहां पे पूरा वो wealth वगैरह लूट के and then they used to, मतलब वो भाग जाते थे दूसरी जगह. So this was the first dynasty. The second dynasty was Khilji dynasty. Khilji was established by Jalauddin Khilji. If you have that movie पद्मावत है ना, so वहां पे जलाउद्दीन खिलजी रहता है. So he ruled for some time, but then he was killed by Alauddin Khilji. So he was the next very important ruler of medieval history also, because he introduced a lot of reforms which were followed even by the Mughals. ठीक है, so he was the first one. Alauddin was the first one to separate religion from politics. See, ठीक है, he understood that religion is different and politics is different, and then he annexed Gujarat and Malwa into Delhi Sultanate. So जो दिल्ली सल्तनत था उसका area increase हुआ. Then he has a slave which is whose name was Malik Kafur, and then this is very famous. So he took a expedition. So from Delhi he marched throughout the India till the end of India, till the tip of India, till south, और जहां जहां पे भी गया he looted that and he sent the riches back to Delhi. ठीक है, so he fought with Ramchandra, which was the Yadav dynasty of Devagiri, Rudradeva, who was the Kakatiya dynasty के थे, और Veer Pandya, who was from the Madurai dynasty, and then he took all the wealth and plunders back to Delhi. ठीक है, now what were the reforms that were introduced by Alauddin? ठीक है, these are important. So first was military reform. So he had a long permanent standing army. See, मैं बहुत जल्दी समझा देता हूँ. So if you have a standing army, ठीक है, standing army का मतलब ये होता है कि obviously you will not always be on war. ठीक है, पूरा 12 महीना, not all 12 months you will be fighting a war. So for that but then if you're always having a standing army, then obviously you will have to pay them. Now you can pay them by two ways. ठीक है, या तो उनको land revenue दे दो या तो उनको cash दे दो. ठीक है, so during the medieval time obviously they used to give land revenues, but then it hurted the finances of the empire. So that's why they started providing cash. ठीक है, so Alauddin was the first one who paid them in cash, मतलब जैसे आज के टाइम पे वैसे. ठीक है, apart from that he started Dag, he started Chehra, and he started Huliya. ये पढ़ लेना, these were some of the military के जो चीजें थी that he started. Then he started, because he was paying people salaries and salary was very low. ठीक है, so he started market reforms. So the main purpose of his market reforms were, remember, because he was paying soldiers in cash. ठीक है, soldiers को ये cash दे रहे थे. So with market reforms he wanted to reduce the prices of products so that even with less cash his soldiers can live a peaceful life, a comfortable life, and they do not revolt against him. ठीक है, so because for that he established 4 markets in Delhi, one for grain, one for clothes, one for slaves, and one for miscellaneous commodities, and each market was under an officer जिनको बोलते थे शाहना मंडी. ठीक है, he was the officer, and all speculations and black marketing were, या warehouse, ये जो जिसको जमाखोरी बोलते हैं, that was stopped. ठीक है, Now grain was also kept in government storehouses. जैसे आज के टाइम पे हमारा जो FCI है, they also keep grain. So similar thing was done in medieval history also. And then regulations were issued to fix all the commodities. Now a new department, Diwan-e Riyasat. So first कौन सा था? बालबन ने establish किया था Diwan-e Arz, which was a military department. So he established one new, which was called Diwan-e Riyasat, which was to control the market. And the head of this was Naib-e Riyasat. ठीक है? Then each merchant will have to be registered to the munhiyans. ठीक है, उनपे उनको register करना पड़ेगा. Even during the time of famine, जो prices थे, they were maintained, and you can read what was the main purpose of the market reforms. Then land revenue reforms. So see, a lot of reforms he did. He did a lot of military reforms, market reforms, and land revenue reforms also. ठीक है, यहाँ पे इसका rule ये था कि earlier what was there कि suppose there is sultan, then there will be a middleman, and then there will be a peasant. ठीक है, so his role was to eliminate him and directly establish the rule between sultan and peasant. ठीक है, now sultan also ended the privileges of middlemen like chaudharis, khoots and mukaddams. ठीक है, इनको खत्म करके he wanted to directly create a link between the sultans and the peasants. Why is that? Because middlemen obviously they will take commission or they will do some kind of corruption. Now there is one land which was called Khalisa land. ठीक है, Khalisa land जो था, it was the royal land जहाँ का जो revenue था, it directly went to sultan. Apart from that, he also introduced the horse tax and all milk cows. ठीक है, इस पे भी उन्होंने tax introduce किया. Then he was the first Delhi Sultan, first Sultan in Delhi to introduce the measurement of land. ठीक है, and it was जो revenue था वो cash में connect किया जाता था. Apart from that, he made one more new department. ठीक है, third department, which was called Diwan-e Mushkat Raj, and that was to collect land revenue. ठीक है, उसके लिए था. Then his reform, जो इनके reform थे अलाउद्दीन के, so they became basis later for शेर शाह सूरी and अकबर. तो जो land revenue है, land reforms थे, they can be asked in exam because it started from in medieval time. It started from the time of Alauddin, then शेर शाह, then अकबर, और जो अकबर का था ही, that was copied by Britishers. ठीक है, तो understand this in the land revenue वाला है, completely understand this thing. Now military campaign में, the most important thing was that 6 times his army fought against Mongols, and defending Delhi was his biggest achievement. ठीक है, so he was able to defend Delhi from the Mongol invasion, and to stop Mongol invasion इसने fortify किया northwest frontier. And Ghazi Malik, there was one person who was appointed as the warden of marches. Warden of marches मतलब कि someone who will march against the Mongols if they ever try to attack the Delhi Sultanate. ठीक है, so that was the major thing. Apart from that, some important scholars like Amir Khusro and Amir Hassan were in his court. And then in Qutub Minar, he added Alai Darwaza. That was the darwaza added by Alauddin. And then he built a new. So see, Delhi जो है, present day capital of Delhi जो है, it is made up of 7 cities. 7 cities were made in different times of India. So Delhi itself was one city. Then he added the second city in Delhi, which was Siri, and Siri was the capital that he made. Okay, so that was the second city in Delhi, which was made by Alauddin. Okay. After Khilji dynasty came Tughlaq. So Khilji dynasty was the shortest dynasty. ये भी याद रखना. Remember कि this was the shortest of the जो दिल्ली सल्तनत की डायनेस्टीज थी. ठीक है, द नेक्स्ट डायनेस्टी वाज तुगलक डायनेस्टी. इस पे घियासुद्दीन तुगलक फाउंडेड, बट द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट वाज मोहम्मद बिन तुगलक, एंड ही इज मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज ही टुक अ लॉट ऑफ नोवेल एक्सपेरिमेंट एंड ऑल हिज एक्सपेरिमेंट फेल्ड. ठीक है, तो आई विल जस्ट डिस्कस द एक्सपेरिमेंट दैट ही डिड एंड व्हाई इट फेल्ड. So the first thing he did was to transfer of capital in 1327 because he wanted to control South India. ठीक है, and he knew it is very difficult to control South India from Delhi. So he decided that he will transfer his capital from Delhi to Devagiri. और देवगिरी को ही नेम्ड दौलताबाद, है ना, बट ऑब्वियसली इट वाज अराउंड 1500 किलोमीटर का जो था वो डिफरेंस था. सो अ लॉट ऑफ थाउजेंड्स ऑफ पीपल हैड टू मार्च फ्रॉम दिल्ली टू दौलताबाद एंड हंड्रेड्स ऑफ पीपल डाइड इन बिटवीन. ठीक है, बट after 2 years he understood that it is not feasible, so they had to return back to Delhi. So they came back to Delhi. So that was his first novel experiment which failed, which was transfer of capital. सेकंड वाज टोकन करेंसी, ठीक है, बिकॉज देयर वाज अ ग्लोबल शॉर्टेज ऑफ सिल्वर, ठीक है, सिल्वर टका जो इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया था, सो देयर वाज अ global shortage of token currency, so because of that he introduced the token currency. What does means is ki suppose you have a copper currency, but that copper currency will have a value of silver currency, ठीक है, so that is a token currency that he bought. बट उसके कारण क्या होने लगा, देयर वाज अ लार्ज स्केल फॉर्जिंग, मतलब नकली कॉइन्स बनाने लगे, बिकॉज कॉपर वाज कॉमनली अवेलेबल, सो कॉमन पीपल स्टार्टेड डूइंग लार्ज स्केल फॉर्जिंग, एंड इवन द टैक्सेस जो है they were paid in false coins, ठीक है, so because of this his treasury became empty, because क्यों, why his treasury became empty, because obviously of the large scale forging, so that's why he took back the currency, ठीक है. So this was the second experiment which failed, and then he also introduced new gold coins जिनको दीनार बोला जाता था, ठीक है, which was told by Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta was a traveler which came during the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, ठीक है. The third important experiment was taxation of Doab. So Doab was the region between Ganga and Yamuna, ठीक है, गंगा और यमुना के बीच का जो रीजन है उसको दोआब बोलते हैं. So because of these two failed experiment, he needed a lot of money. So because he needed a lot of money, he introduced new taxes in the Doab region. But because even मतलब he was very ill lucked also, मतलब इसका किस्मत भी खराब था. So when he increased the taxes, it led to at the same time a severe famine hit the region. ठीक है, सूखा पड़ गया. So because of that, there were a lot of revolts that were in this time. So during the last years of his life, all his time went to suppress these revolts. ठीक है, so he took a lot of experiments for the betterment of people, but all his experiments failed. ठीक है. Now he did a lot of agricultural reforms. So he understood that if I want to collect good land revenue, I will have to promote agriculture, so that if I have promoted agriculture, people will have lot of money. When people will have lot of money, obviously they will pay taxes. So he started giving takavi loans. Okay, takavi loans were loans for cultivation, and then a new department he established, that was Diwane Kohi, and Diwane Kohi was for agriculture. Okay, then there were a lot of rebellions during his later part of the time, and when he died, Badoni, so he was a scholar, he said when he died, Sultan was free from his people and his people were free from Sultan, because दोनों both suffered because of each other. ठीक है. Next in line was Firoz Shah Tughlaq. ठीक है, Firoz Shah Tughlaq was cousin of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and he was the one, because यहाँ पे कोई hereditary succession नहीं था, so Muhammad bin Tughlaq का बेटा नहीं बना था, तो it was Firoz Shah Tughlaq who became king, and he was made sultan by nobles. ठीक है. When he became sultan, Khan-e-Jahan was one man, he was a Brahmin convert to Islam, he became the wazir or the prime minister of Firoz Shah Tughlaq. ठीक है. Then he took a lot of military campaigns. ये आप पढ़ लेना. Major जो था that was in Odisha, and the second was in Nagarkot. Nagarkot में जो ज्वालामुखी temple library थी, so he took a lot of Sanskrit manuscript from this ज्वालामुखी temple library and then translated into Persian. ठीक है. Then कुछ important जो इसकी taxation policies थी, so he reimposed jizya. So jizya was not, it was not removed, but it was not used by a lot of Delhi Sultanate rulers, but then he reimposed jizya on non-Muslims, and he was also the first one to impose irrigation tax. Basically ये याद रखना कि जो फिरोज शाह तुगलक FST, so he did a lot of irrigation work, ठीक है, and he built a lot of cities. These two are the important features of Firoz Shah Tughlaq. ठीक है. So the one of the longest canal was 200 kilometers, that was from Satluj to Hansi, जिसको राजवाही बोलते थे, and another जिसका नाम था Uluk Khaji. So that was one canal which was built between Yamuna and Hisar. Hisar is a district in Haryana, and in the side of that canal 1200 fruit gardens were also planted. ठीक है. Then he was the builder of cities. So some of the important cities that were built by Firoz Shah was Firozabad. So that was the third important city that was added. Delhi, Siri, and then Firozabad, which is now the area is called Firoz Shah Kotla. Okay. Apart from that, he founded a city which is called Jaunpur, which is a district in Uttar Pradesh, and Hisar, Firozpur, and Tughlaqapur. So these are some of the cities that were founded by him. Okay. Then one more thing about Firoz Shah Tughlaq was that he was very fond of slaves. ठीक है, especially जो male slaves थे. So he was very fond of male slaves. So that's why there was a department, a new department that he made, that was called Diwane Bandagan. Okay, Diwane Bandagan was a department of slaves. Okay, apart from that, he developed a royal factories also, जिनको कारखाना बोलते थे, and he made a new department which was Diwane Khairat. ठीक है, Diwane Khairat was department of charity. So basically जो poor लोग थे या जो widows थे या जो orphans थे, to provide help to them, to provide financial security to them, these things were done. ठीक है. So he patronized some scholars like Barani and Afif, but he was a bigot, religiously bigot tha, ठीक है? So he used to oppress Hindus, and he just not used to oppress Hindus, but also within Islam he used to oppress Shia Muslims and Sufis, ठीक है? So those who did not uh, accept his version of Islam, so they were punished during his rule. And then by the end जो था तुगलक dynasty का, that was because in 1398 and 1399 Temur Lung जो था, so he invaded India, he plundered Delhi, and which led to the end of Tughlaq dynasty. ठीक है. Then came Sayyid dynasty. This was the Sayyid dynasty था, ये least influential dynasty थी. ठीक है. It did not have much influence in India. It did not have much influence in India. So when he went, Timur went, so he appointed Khizr Khan as the governor of Multan. But then he also captured Delhi, and he's founded Sayyid dynasty in 1414. Then next was his son Mubarak Shah, who did not have much control over his nobles. And the final one was Alam Shah. So जो Alam Shah था, he gave the empire to the Bahlol Lodi, and he went back to Badaun. Okay, so he left the Sayyid. So the Sayyid, so they left the kingdom, the India, and they went back from the place where they came. So it led to the establishment of Lodi dynasty. Okay, तीन Lodis थे. Bahlol Lodi who founded. Second was Sikandar Lodi, and third was Ibrahim Lodi, who was defeated by Babar in Battle of Panipat, and which led to the establishment of Mughal rule in इंडिया. ठीक है. सो जो लोधी डायनेस्टी थी, अब अभी तक जो दीज डायनेस्टीज वर ऑल टर्किश डायनेस्टी, जो लोधी डायनेस्टी थी, इट वाज द फर्स्ट अफगान डायनेस्टी. सो देयर वर ओनली टू अफगान डायनेस्टी इन इंडिया. फर्स्ट वाज लोधी, सेकंड वाज शेर शाह सूरी. ठीक है. ही डिफीटेड हुमायूं एंड देन ही एस्टैब्लिश्ड अफगान डायनेस्टी. So he was Balol Lodi was the first Afghan leader. ठीक है. So the important Lodi was Sikandar Lodi. He was the greatest, and इसका जो important वो था, that was कि he bought Bihar under his control, and from Bihar he then bought Bengal also his control. So his जो इसका territory था, that expanded from Punjab to Bengal and Bihar. Next was there was a Sharik kingdom in Jaunpur, so he also took that kingdom, मतलब उसको भी defeat करके he annexed that. He tried to control a lot of corruption. That was one thing that he did, and he made efficient system of espionage. ठीक है. So he established the intelligence department, जिसका नाम था बरीदे मुमालिक. ठीक है. बरीदे मुमालिक was the head of information and intelligence department, and then he maintained law and order, built roads and all those things. One important thing was that he introduced the new measurement of land, which was called Gaze Sikandari. Okay, Gaze Sikandari was a 32 digit measuring which measured cultivable land. Okay, now just like this person फिरोज शाह तुगलक, जो सिकंदर लोधी था, he was also a religious bigot था. ठीक है. He was also a religious bigot, religious zealous था. So he forbade the visit of Muslim women to the shrines of saints, and he prohibited taziyas in the festival of Muharram. So within Islam there are two sects which are Sunni and Shia. So जो शिया है उनका एक मोर्निंग होता है, मोर्निंग ऑफ फेस्टिवल जिसको आप बोल सकते हो, दैट इज मुहर्रम, जहाँ पे वो तजिया निकालते हैं. ठीक है. So it is a kind of झांकी जिसको बोलते हैं. ठीक है. वो निकालते हैं. So he banned it during his time. ठीक है. And a lot of forceful conversions also took place during the time of Sikandar Lodhi. ठीक है. Art and culture में this is very important point, that he himself was fond of literature and poetry, or he wrote in Persian, and his पेन नेम वाज गुलरुख. इट कैन बी आस्क्ड इन एग्जाम. ठीक है. कि जो पेन नेम था गुलरुख, वो कौन सुल्तान था जो लिखता था? सो दैट वाज सिकंदर लोधी. ठीक है. देन ही वाज अ पैट्रन ऑफ लर्नड मैन. जो शहनाई है, शहनाई इज अ instrument which was popularized during his time. ठीक है. And one important book on music which is called Lahajat-e-Sikandar Shahi was written during his time, and then he founded the city of Agra. ठीक है. In 1506. This is also an important point. Final was Ibrahim Lodi. We all know he was an arrogant man, and he used to insult his nobles. So because of that, जो noble था, especially of Punjab, so he जिसका नाम था दौलत खान लोधी, so he invited Babur to invade India, and then in 1526 first battle of Panipat took place between Ibrahim Lodi and Babur, in which Ibrahim Lodi was killed, which led to end of Delhi Sultanate and establishment of Mughal Sultanate. ठीक है? And Ibrahim Lodi was the only Delhi Sultanate का जो leader था who was killed in a battlefield. ठीक है? None of the other nobles या जो leaders थे या जो sultans थे, they ever died in battlefield. ठीक है? तो ये तो जनरल हो गया. नाउ सम इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. सी यहाँ पे मैंने एक पॉइंट नहीं ऐड किया है, दैट इज आर्ट एंड कल्चर. सो दैट एंड आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर आई विल ऐड एंड आई विल शेयर द नोट्स बाय इवनिंग टुडे. ओके, आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर तक का तो दिल्ली सल्तनत आपका पूरा आज इवनिंग तक में नोट्स शेयर हो जाएंगे. नेक्स्ट क्लास इज ऑन 13th. ये याद रखना, आई विल शेयर इट इन ग्रुप ऑल्सो. ठीक है, सो डे आफ्टर टुमारो नेक्स्ट क्लास इन विच वी विल फोकस मेजरली ऑन 3 points. On 3 topics we will focus. First is Bhakti movement, Sufi movement. Second is Vijayanagar Empire, and third is Mughal administration. ठीक है? So Delhi Sultanate का जो administration था, तो it was an Islamic state. ठीक है? And Sultan was the representative of Khalif, जिनका नाम वो खुतबा पे या prayer पे पढ़ते थे. ठीक है? So that was one important thing. Sultan was the most important and he was the ultimate authority, मतलब highest authority in the military, legal and political activities. ठीक है? Central government में below Sultan there was Naib. ठीक है? So Naib something like you can say something but not equal to, but like president, suppose president with power is Sultan and then prime minister was Naib, something like that, but there were different kind of prime minister. Although at that time जो prime minister था वो finance minister था, तो मैं मतलब understand that prime minister in today's context. Even at that time there was prime minister जिनको वजीर कहा जाता था, but they were basically finance minister. ठीक है? So जो नायब था, they enjoyed all the power of sultan in the exercise of departments. ठीक है? departments के ऊपर होते थे. And in the time, in normal times, he was a deputy sultan, much inferior to wazir. But if sultan was weak, अगर जो noble है, जो sultan है, he himself is weak, so at that time जो नायब है, they became very important, very powerful. ठीक है? Next to Naib was Wazir, who was Prime Minister, and he basically looked after the finance department. जो वजीर है, he was assisted by 2 officers. First was Mushrif Mumalik, which was an accountant, and second was Mustafa Mumalik, which was auditor. Okay. Then military department की बात करते हैं, तो military department was called Diwane Ariz, and Diwane Ariz जो था, it was under a officer जिसको बोलते थे Ariz Mumalik. Now remember, Ariz Mumalik was like defense minister. So defense minister is not the commander of the army. ठीक है? So he recruited leaders, he recruited soldiers, but he was not the commander in chief of army. ठीक है? Because commander of chief कौन था? Sultan himself. Like आज के time पे कौन है? President. ठीक है? So it was like same. So he was like defense minister. He was not the president of army. Then apart from that, there was navy. Navy was called Bahar, and जो navy का chief था, that was called Amir Bahar. ठीक है? Chark and Falkhun, so they were the instruments used for throwing stones. So basically, like अगर मैं drawing बताऊं तो कुछ ये इस तरीके की machines होती थी. ठीक है? Like this, and in this thing they will put stones and then they will throw stones. ठीक है? Over castles या walls to break it. ठीक है? So that was called Charak and Falkhun. और जो special slaves थे, ठीक है? They were called Bandagan and they were usually used for army. ठीक है? Next is religious administration. तो जो highest official होता था in religious administration, that was Sadarus Sadar. He was like Chief Justice of India. It was something like that. So religion, religious matters पे he was the one, and then he was the one to enforce Islamic rules and regulations. Then जो foreign minister था उस time पे they were called Diwane Risalat. ठीक है? Diwane Risalat were foreign ministers and diplomatic correspondents. अगर judicial administration की बात की जाए, sorry, religious administration में Sadar was the highest religious authority, and Diwan Qaza, he was the like highest judicial officer, so like chief justice of India. ठीक है? But usually क्या होता था कि जो chief सदर होते थे and chief काजी होते थे, they were same people, because usually जो laws थे they were devised from religion, so that's why they were both the same people. Then in civil matters, Sharia was followed for Muslims and village panchayats were used for local Hindus. But जो criminal laws होते थे उसके लिए Sultan used to make law which were common for both Hindu and Muslims. Next important department was Diwan-e Insha, so it was a correspondence department. ठीक है, मतलब all the important letters या regulations, ठीक है, between Sultan and different officials जो थे, they were made by the department of Diwan-e Insha. ठीक है, Diwan-e Insha, they drafted important royal orders and they sent it to Sultan for his sanction. इसका जो head होता था, that is called Damere Dad. ठीक है, that was the head. Then Muhammad bin Tughlaq founded one new department which was called Diwan-e-Siyasat, that was to implement his system of justice in a broader basis. तो मतलब ये एक तरीके का king's justice था. ठीक है, अगर लोकल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की बात करें, सो द होल किंगडम वाज डिवाइडेड इनटू प्रोविंसेस व्हिच वर कॉल्ड इक्ता, व्हिच वाज अंडर इक्तेदार. ठीक है, सो द सिस्टम ऑफ इक्ता वाज स्टार्टेड बाय इल्तुतमिश, रिमेंबर दिस थिंग, एंड ईच इक्ता वाज अंडर मुक्तीज और वलीज एंड दीज पावरफुल मिलिट्री कमांडर्स व्हिच वर लेटर बिकेम इक्तेदार. ठीक है, ठीक है, सो दिस वाज अ जनरल. और यहाँ पे पैरेलल जो रूलर थे, so apart from Maktis and Ilis, Walis, so they were military commanders, and there were Iqtidars, so they provided troops to the military. Apart from that, from provinces, from Iqta, so there were Shiks. Shiks were like division जो आज के टाइम पे were, and then Paragana which was like district. ठीक है, and village was the basic unit of an administration, and जो village headmen थे उनको they were called Mukaddam, Chaudhary and Patwari. ठीक है, Patwari were village accountant. If we talk about economy, तो land revenue के लिए they were divided into three categories. Ikta land, which was under Iqtidar, so it was like feudal land. Khalisa land, so it was like royal land. It was directly under the control of Sultan. And then Inam land. So Inam land was a land which was given to the religious leaders. ठीक है, so these were the Inam lands or institutions. So normally जो revenue था वो 1/3 होता था, but in extreme condition it was also put 1/2. ठीक है, 1/2. Then they also provide takavi loan or agricultural loan so that agriculture can grow. And then some like Firoz Shah, he encouraged to farmers to cultivate superior crops like wheat and horticulture. ठीक है, then इस इंडस्ट्रीज में आप याद रखो कि दे डिड कुछ कारखाने थे, देयर वर अ फ्यू कारखानास व्हिच वर एस्टैब्लिश्ड बाय दिल्ली सल्तनत, बट मोस्ट ऑफ द इंडस्ट्रीज वर प्राइवेट. ठीक है, और वहां पे अब आप देख सकते हो कि जैसे ये टर्म्स, जस्ट रीड दीज टर्म्स, है ना, कि रातबी. देन टेक्सटाइल में कौन से एरियाज फेमस है? सो मुस्लिम, इट वाज इन डक्का, लाइक डक्का इज प्रेजेंट डे ढाका ऑफ बांग्लादेश, so muslin was famous from that. Patola cloth was famous of Gujarat. ठीक है, इन सूरत जो जरी था, जरी वर्क जो ब्रॉडर वर्क होता है, दैट वाज फेमस, है ना. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट पर्ल डाइविंग जो था, इट वाज फेमस इन गुजरात एंड तमिलनाडु, एंड आइवरी एंड सैंडलवुड ऑफ कर्नाटका एंड केरल. बीदड़ी जो आर्ट थी, दैट वाज आल्सो वेरी फेमस. वीवर कम्युनिटी जो थी, दैट वाज एट दैट टाइम वाज पंचाला और विश्वकर्मा. Some important trading communities were Gujaratis, Marwadi, Oswals and Maheshwaris in north, Chettis in south and Banjaras in Rajputana. ठीक है, यहाँ पे a lot of guilds were also developed. जो साउथ में guilds थे उनको मनीग्राम या नाना देसी भी बोलते थे. दिस इज important. ठीक है, तो these is what they called. Then Banjaras जो थे, so they were a kind of trading committee which used to take goods from one place to another, and they used to move in long like caravans. ठीक है, then among Muslims जो बोहरास थे, they were the major trading community. ठीक है, they mostly traded in Red Sea and Persian Gulf, and during this time banking community also developed. तो native bankers जो थे, so they gave loans. जो आज के टाइम पे बैंक क्या करते हैं, वो डिपॉजिट लेते हैं और लोन देते हैं, सिंपल सी बात है. so that is what they also did. and जो इनका अकाउंट था ऑफ बिल्स ऑफ एक्सचेंज की, कहाँ से पैसा आया, कहाँ पैसा गया, so that was called hundis. ठीक है, and the most famous hundi was of Surat hundis. ठीक है, it talks about कि they carried business with even Egypt and Iraq. So what it means is that even they did business with foreign countries also. ठीक है, then there was one more cloth which was called alsi. ठीक है, so it was also famous, and it was exported to Alexandria and Russia. Then there were 5 important taxes. ठीक है, first was ursh, which was the irrigation tax. Second was kharaj, which was at first was a land tax only on non-Muslims, but later on it was imposed on Muslims also. Then jizya, which was imposed on non-Muslims. Zakat, which was a kind of tax based on Hanafi principles of Islam, and khams, which is a kind of war booty. कि suppose if you have a war और आपने कोई चीज लूट ली of some other kingdom, so 1/5 of that will go to king or sultan. ठीक है, देन अगर सोसाइटी की बात करें तो ड्यूरिंग द मिडिवल टाइम पर्दा सिस्टम केम टू इंडिया, ठीक है. मुस्लिम्स दे themselves were divided on ethnic lines like Indian Muslims, Afghan Muslim, Turkish Muslims, Persian Muslims, and there were hardly intermarriages between different ethnic Muslims. Traditional caste system persisted at that time, and during the time of Delhi Sultanate, which was changed by Akbar, बट ओनली मुस्लिम्स वर गिवन हाई प्लेसेस इन नोबिलिटी, ठीक है. हिंदुओं को हाई प्लेसेस इन नोबिलिटी नहीं मिलती थी. इट वाज ओनली आफ्टर द Akbar's rule that Hindus also started getting high places in the administration of the Sultanate, ठीक है. So these are some of the very, so see, within 1.5 hours we have finished almost 40% of medieval history, है ना. Obviously we have skipped a lot of part, but that is the understanding part या रटने वाला part है. But we have developed a good context of what was happening in the early medieval history and during the time of Delhi Sultanate. किस तरीके से वो काम करते थे and what was and how they developed their system of administration and their uh, other things. Okay. I will share these notes in evening after finishing. मेरे को दो पन्ने और ऐड करने हैं. I have not added art and architecture because I thought that I will cover in art and architecture class, but obviously वो बहुत different class होगी. So I will add the art and architecture part of Delhi Sultanate and then I'll share the notes by today evening. And next class will be on 13th. ठीक है. So if you have any questions, any queries, so you can ask now, and then we will end the class.
Sir, sir, Jinsane, who is mentioned in Rashtrakuts, is he same as that who is mentioned in the ancient one who wrote Harivamsa Puran?
No, both are different.
Okay, sir.
Sir, we need to read Lucent. See, देखो, if you have time, in prelims broad reading is always rewarded, ठीक है. अगर आप जितना ज्यादा पढ़ोगे prelims उतना ही फायदा करता है. If you have time, you can read Lucent, but most of the important points of Lucent will be added in these notes, ठीक है. तो जो मैं final notes दूंगा आपको medieval history का, उस पे all the important points of Lucent will be added in that. So you just have to read these notes. मतलब ये 1 point source हो सकते हैं आपकी पढ़ाई का. So this आप ना मेरे को इस पे I'm sending you my this thing ID. तो आप इस पे मेरे को मैसेज करो ना. ये तो मतलब if you are preparing just now, so we'll have to discuss कि how to you will start from scratch. So because this is an ancient history class, so आप इस पे मेरे को personally मैसेज कर सकते हो. We will discuss that. सर इसके बाद नेक्स्ट कौन से सब्जेक्ट्स कंटिन्यू होंगे? सी, अभी तो पहले ये खत्म हो जाए मिडिवल, इसके बाद मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री करेंगे, ठीक है. दैट इज द नेक्स्ट टॉपिक दैट वी विल कवर. देखो मेमोराइज करने की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी, है ना. अब तो फॉर एग्जांपल बैटल ऑफ टरेन है तो याद ही अब तो याद ही हो जाएगी कि इट वाज बिटवीन गोरी, है ना. 1191 में इट वाज बिटवीन गोरी एंड पृथ्वीराज चौहान. सो इट वाज फॉट इन 1191 एंड 1192, ठीक है. बैटल ऑफ चांदवार 1194 विद जयचंद्रा. बैटल ऑफ पानीपत 1526. सेकंड बैटल ऑफ पानीपत विद वाज बिटवीन अकबर एंड हेमचंद्रा, ठीक है. एंड देन फाइनल वाज बिटवीन मराठास एंड द अफगान. सो यू डू नॉट, अगर आप पढ़ोगे एंजॉय करोगे, सो इसको मेमोराइज करने की जरूरत नहीं है, ठीक है. इट विल नेचुरली कम टू योर मेमोरी. पीडीएफ विल बी शेयर्ड, है ना, जो आपके रिस्पेक्टिव ग्रुप्स हैं फिनिक्स का और हाई यील्डिंग क्लास का. सो उस पे आई विल शेयर बाय टुडे इवनिंग, है ना. And some of the sample PDFs I will share in main group also. SOMP का जो main group है, I'll share that also. You can see the quality of the notes and then you can decide for yourself. One more thing is there that it is a request that आप लोग SOMP inquiry पे just share your feedback of classes, है ना. So it will help us also in improving if we are lacking in some space. So just please अभी class के बाद ही just share your feedback to that to that handle, so that it will help us also assess that how our classes are going, है ना. Submit your honest feedback if you have liked the classes, ठीक है. so that it will help us also. So okay, I'll end the class and just revise, है ना? By evening I will share the notes. So just revise whatever I have taught you, है ना? And within 2 days we will finish medieval history and we will be in a very good position. ठीक है? By the end of January. थोड़ा सा I am stretching this thing. I am stretching the high yielding classes till March because there is no reason to rush, है ना? You should get sufficient time to read, to revise and then to give test, है ना? क्योंकि हमारी बहुत हाई इम्पैक्ट, बहुत लिमिटेड क्लासेस है, तो जस्ट टू गिव वेरी गुड क्वालिटी थोड़ा सा हम स्प्रेड आउट कर देंगे क्लास पे, उस पर कोई इशू नहीं है. ठीक है, चलो, थैंक यू एंड हैव अ वेरी प्रोडक्टिव डे.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.